Yeah, Bezat Hashem, we're going to start. I want to thank everybody for coming. As you know, Josh Melamed sent the commandment. We're going to learn about Purim. So I have no choice. Unless you guys want to learn about something else, but we're going to talk about Purim. I guess this thing is blocking everyone. Ready, guys? Yeah, it's in the back right there. Ready, guys? Oh, it's already on Facebook. Okay, so what happens is we're going to actually learn a little bit about Purim, people. So I'm not going to go into the story of the Purim because I'm sure everybody has learned about Purim. You know the story of Purim. Let me have your attention, guys. So we're going to actually go through just one point of Purim, and the session that we're going to have is going to teach us that actually Jews are supernatural. We are above nature. It's not only something, that Jews, as Jews we say, but even non-Jewish thinkers have hinted it that Jews are above nature. Let's see how we see it from the story of Purim. You see, when you look at the story of Purim, actually at that time, the Jews were the luckiest people that had the most secure situation. If you look at the history, why? Because first of all, the queen of the country was a Jewish woman. You know the story, right? The first wife of Achashverosh was a lady. If you guys unblock, if you change your seats. So the name was Vashti. Vashti doesn't come to dance after the king commands him. So they execute her. She's killed. And then afterwards, Esther takes over. It's the only time that we find in our history that actually the queen is a Jewish person. You want to be luckier than that? Not only that, her uncle or her cousin, Mordechai, he was actually one of the advisors of the king. It says he used to go Beshar HaMelech. He used to go at the gate of the courtyard of the king. So you have an advisor as a Jew. We have had advisors to the kings in many generations. When we had King Ferdinand, he was the king of Spain. So his advisor was Don Yitzchak Abarbanel, was a Jew. But the queen was not Jewish. Here the Jews had both, a Jewish king, and at the same time that they had a Jewish king, they had a Jewish queen, and at the same time that they had a Jewish queen, the advisor was a Jew. So seemingly that was the most secure generations, the biggest security that Jewish people can have. But at the same time, the worst decree happened in times of Purim. Why was that the worst decree? Because first of all, there was a destruction of all Jews. There was a commandment, a decree from Haman and from the king, or if you want to call him Haman, whatever you want to call him, to kill actually all the Jews in one day. Now, why was that the worst decree ever happening? You see, there's actually a Gemara. The Gemara says there was a certain kindness that God did, that he scattered the Jews all around the world. We don't all live in Israel. We didn't even have the country of Israel for 1900 years when we were in exile. So it says God did a kindness that he scattered the Jews. What kind of kindness is that? So the Gemara says, because if there's an evil king that's going to put evil decrees against the Jews, that only affects the Jews that live in his country, not the Jews in the other countries. Besides that, the Jews living in this country, they have a chance to escape and go to the countries that their life is not in danger. So that's a kindness, so to speak, the righteousness that God did. But such a thing was not possible then in old Persia and Iran, because he was a king over 127 countries. Basically the whole civilized world, except China. But I'm saying the whole civilized world was under the Persian king. So where are they going to run away to? Anywhere they go is under his kingdom. Besides that, the decree was to kill them all in one day. Now, what's so bad about it? If let's say they were going to get killed in different days, let's say there was a decree to kill the Jews on the south. So then the southern Jews would be able to run to the north. When they want to kill the northern side, they run back to the south. They were killing them all in one day. There was nowhere they could run. There was nowhere they could run away to. It's a serious problem. Besides that, it says that they had nowhere else to run away to. As we said, there's no other country to run away to. So what are they supposed to do? There was no hope for them, seemingly. So the question is, and even in terms of Paro, you know what I'm saying? In times of Pharaoh, when he wanted to kill the Jewish people, they all lived in Egypt. And actually, nobody was able to run away out of Egypt. There's a medrash that says they had a lot of magical powers, or the country was so secure that one person wasn't able to run away. But even then, Pharaoh wanted to kill only the boys, not the girls. So here, they all live in the same country. The death is in one day, and he wanted to kill boys and girls. So how could really, at such a secure time, such a bad thing happen? So when we don't study the Talmud, we think it was just, a freak accident. They didn't know that she's Jewish or whatever it is. And then this Haman comes, it was all freak accident. The Gemara says, no, it wasn't. The Gemara actually explains that this happened because of a certain sin that was done at that generation. The Gemara counts two of them. One of them that the Gemara counts is that the Jews that lived in Shushan, they actually went to the party that Achashverosh made. Now let's give the background. When Achashverosh became the king and he secured his kingdom on the third year, he made a party for 6 months, 180 days. That's a party, right? You thought Obama could make parties. He goes to party for a week, then he comes back. But again, he made a party for 180 days for the entire Persian Empire. Then after he finished 180 days, 6 months of partying, he made a party for the people of Shushan and invited all the Jews. And he did something else. He brought all the vessels of the first temple that, he took as a, he brought it from Babylonia, from Babel, and the Babylonian king confiscated it from the temple, and they had really amazing gold and silver. They brought it and they gave it to everybody to drink from them. And the Jews enjoyed it, right? Using the vessels of the destroyed house of God. So the Gemara says that was their sin. They went and they enjoyed the meal that Achashverosh made. According to some opinions, they ate even non-kosher food in addition to enjoying, using the vessels of the temple. Another opinion says that they had the sin of idol worship when they were in Babylonia. But again, they had a sin. So because of that, this evil decree happened. So is that clear so far, guys? What do we see from this? Really, the most secure time, but because they sinned, such a bad decree happened. What do we learn from this? That Jewish life does not depend on nature. Naturally, everything could be secure. But Jews don't live according to laws of nature. The existence of the Jews actually depends on the keeping of Torah and mitzvah. That's what it depends on. That's what we learn from here. Again, it was the most secure time. The queen was Jewish, and one of the advisors was a Jew, but that didn't do anything. Because they enjoyed the meal and they actually used the vessels of the temple, or because they worshipped idols, so the security didn't mean anything. That bad decree happened. Let's go a little bit further. How were they saved? I'm sure you guys know this part of the story. What was the first thing when the Jews heard that they're going to die in one day? 11 months later. This happened on Nisan, and on Adar was supposed to kill all the Jews. What's the first thing Mordechai and Esther did? No, before that, before he went he didn't go to the king right away. They waited 3 days. What did they do for 3 days? Yes, you do know. Think. They did pray. What else do the Jews do when they pray? They do something else. No. The opposite of eating. They fasted. Right? They fasted for 3 days. Correct? Now I have a question. What was the first thing? You ask a regular diplomat, when Jews are in danger, what's the first thing they do? They call the United States, they call the United Nations. You do diplomatic stuff. They didn't do that. No diplomacy. First thing what they did, they fasted. I had a question, guys. Who went and actually convinced Achashverosh not to kill the Jews directly? Esther, right? Why did the king love Esther? Well, why? Why did he choose? He had choice of,
She was Jewish.
millions. No, he didn't know Jewish. Millions of women. What was so special about Esther that he married Esther? What does the Megillah say? She was the most beautiful girl in the entire Persian Empire. Now, when you fast, you want to get such a wife, huh? No problem, look for it. But you have to become first Achashverosh, but you don't want to become him. Be a Jew is better than being Achashverosh, I promise you. So then you got to pray that you want to marry your soulmate, not Esther. If she happens to be Esther, fantastic. No problem. So, anyways, guys, when it comes to marrying your soulmate, everybody's what? Esther knows. Moshe Rabbeinu. Esther, I didn't know that. Okay, so guys, let's go a little bit further. When somebody, excuse me, guys, please, let's behave a little bit. When somebody fasts, does he become more attractive, or does she become more attractive or less attractive? Of course, less attractive. You fast, you don't have a color on your face. So why in the world did Esther do that? They didn't do anything diplomatic. They fast. And not only that, Esther knows that the only way that it could get the attention of the king is because of her beauty. And she fasts not for 1 hour, 2 hours, 1 day. She fasts for 3 days. Is that normal? Why did she do that? Not only that, people, there's actually a halacha that we're going to discuss that makes the question bigger. You see, it says whenever Jews are in trouble, so the custom was that they used to fast. They used to fast. Now, what happens if you're in trouble, but you have to run away? You can't fast, because if you're going to fast, you won't be able to run away. They're chasing you. So the halacha says, even though fasting takes away evil, if you can't fast, you take upon yourself to fast after you get out of your trouble. So if you're being chased, God forbid, by an enemy, you can't fast. You need to eat the food to have the energy to run away. You take upon yourself to fast, and then you fast later on. And the Chafetz Chaim in Shulchan Aruch and halacha says, because when you take upon yourself to fast, bli neder, so the accepting of the fast has the same power as fasting. So wouldn't it be more normal for Esther to take upon herself to fast instead of fasting? Okay, you want to fast because you want to save the Jews, but your beauty is going to become diminished. So take upon yourself to fast. And that's as if you're fasting. Why did Shibboleth be so religious that she actually fasted? That makes the question bigger. So actually the same answer applies, because they knew this was not a natural thing. A Jewish life does not depend on nature. It doesn't. They knew that the reason why this bad decree happened because the Jews swayed from what God wanted. So the only way that is going to be nullified is if they go back to God. And but the way we go back is that we return, we repent. And part of repenting is fasting. Now, why did Esther fast? She could have taken upon herself to fast. Other Jews fasted because there's a special law that if the entire community is fasting, I can't separate myself from the community. I have to participate in the pain of the community. We're all used to this, right? Whenever there's trouble in one side of the world, what do good people do? They donate their time, they donate their money, they always send, on rescue missions to save people. This is something that we're brought up with. When one side of the world is in trouble, we try to help as much as we can, whether bodily or sending money or whatever it is. Right? We do that. So then Esther had to participate in the pain. If everybody's fasting, she had to fast too. So what do we see from the salvation of the Jews? They didn't do anything diplomatic at the beginning. She didn't even make herself look more beautiful. She went closer to God. You got to do diplomatic stuff. They did it, but that's not the main thing. The main thing is being close to God. Now, actually, I want to say that even non-Jews have realized this. I have to find this article. Everybody knows Mark Twain?
Yeah.
The big thinker, the big philosopher, the big author. So he says he had a very big question. He says, I don't understand. What makes a nation, either they have to speak the same language or the same country, and they have to have the same culture. He says Jews at that time, at the end of the 1800s, beginning of 1900s, whenever he lived, he says they don't share the same language. All Jews don't speak Hebrew. They didn't have a country. They mostly lived in Europe and Asia, maybe some in America, whatever, right? So they don't have the same country, they don't speak the same language, they don't have the same culture. Ashkenazis don't eat gondi Friday night. And you guys don't eat gefilte fish Friday night, right? So we don't have the same custom at all. And so how did the Jews survive? That's his question. I have a bigger question. The Romans ruled over the entire world. They came for 300 years, they ruled, and now they assimilated. There's no more Romans. They assimilated with other countries. The Greeks came, they ruled for 200 years. No more Greeks. They assimilated, right? The Persian Empire, for a few hundred years they ruled. Now they're gone. And these Jews being persecuted, not having the same country, and they're persecuted for so many years. How did they exist? So it says that's one of the mysteries of the world. How did the Jews exist? He had no answer for it. But again, our rabbis tell us, there are some times that the situation of the Jewish people is like a little lamb among 70 wolves. Not always like that. There are times that, when the entire world is against them. One of the times was basically World War II, that the whole world didn't care who's getting killed. Actually, 2 ships came to the United States. The Americans sent it back to Europe, and they all got slaughtered by the Nazis. They didn't care. Americans actually joined the rescue after Pearl Harbor, when there was a bombing in Pearl Harbor. Before that, they didn't care. No country raised a finger to save the Jews. The only one was only Morocco. When Hitler wanted to attack Morocco, so the king of Morocco loved the Jews. He said, these Jews are mine. You have no permission to attack them. He was the only one. So how did the Jews exist? So the Gemara says, the is like a little, sheep, sometimes leading wolves. But our shepherd, which is God, is so great that he chases away all the 70 wolves. So even Mark Twain, he didn't give an answer, but he had a question. According to laws of nature, Jews should have been extinct, just like the Romans and the Greeks, and the old Persian Empire. They ruled, and that's it, they assimilated, they died. So this is exactly the story of Purim, that we have to know as Jews that we are supernatural. Your life doesn't depend on nature. It depends on our connection with God. That's one great lesson that we learn. So, whenever we have trouble, in our lives, first thing is turn to God. Then do diplomatic stuff. You get that? Now, there's actually something very funny. And, the Gemara says that, there's a Mishnah, if you guys have studied the Mishnah, the oral law, that it talks about laws of planting. So then it says that book is called the Book of Faith, Book of Emunah. Why? Because the Jew believes in God and he plants. Does that make sense to you? No. If somebody doesn't believe in God, they don't plant and it grows. What does that have to do with believing in God? Atheists plant and it grows. So it says, why do we call the book that talks about planting in the Torah Book of Faith? Because the Jew has faith in God and he plants. Because that's exactly what a Jew is. We live above nature. You have to know your values, people. There's nothing wrong with anybody on earth. Jews are good, non-Jews are good, everybody is good. But you guys are supernatural. And the proof is, what Mark Twain said. Story of Purim, first of all. Said Jews should have been extinct years ago. You understand how supernatural you are? What's our existence, people? What's the lesson that we learn? What's our existence? Our connection with God, exactly. The more connected you're to God, so then there's definitely, that's a secret of the Jews existing. That's a great thing that we know from the story of Purim. Any questions? No questions? Everything is clear? Baruch Hashem. So now we got to go to the second part. Wow. You see, you brought a blessing. You brought a bunch of girls.
That's why I was late. I was gathering the game.
Awesome. So is he saying something good or is blaming you? Which one?
He's blaming. He was the one who's blaming.
No, he's not blaming you. He's saying how important you are that I want to get to. Remember that. In this class, we don't blame.
Exactly.
All right, so anyways, guys, this was the first thing that we learned about Purim. It's another thing that I wanted to discuss with you, actually. By the way, guys, this Shabbat, it's a very important Shabbat. Now, even let's say if we don't have the time, we don't go to synagogue on Shabbat, this week is a mitzvah of the Torah to hear the Parsha of Zachor. It talks about the destruction of Amalek. So this Parsha is a mitzvah of Torah to hear for boys and girls, according to many opinions. So please, if you guys have time to go to the synagogue to hear the Parsha of Zachor, definitely do it. If it happens that you can't go, guys, let's continue. If it happens that you can't go, so on the day of Purim itself, during the day, do I look funny or something? No? I don't look funny? Okay, good. Because a little funny, that's okay. When you get to my age, you look funny too. Maybe not. I'm just kidding. I love your laugh. Anyway, so if you can't try to make it to shul this week, To hear Parsha of Zachor is important. If you can't, on Purim day, you have to hear the Megillah twice. Correct? You have to hear the Megillah twice at night, which is next Monday night, and Tuesday by day. They take the Torah out too and read about Amalek. Next few minutes that we have, we're going to go through the obligations that we have on Purim. And actually, we see that they're not just customs, but the reasons behind it is really beautiful. And it shows the unity of the Jewish people. So the first mitzvah is to hear the Megillah. Go ahead.
I have a question. Can you explain also when we're talking about Purim why we wear costumes?
Why do you wear a costume?
Yeah, is it just like
Yeah, Be'ezer Hashem, no problem.
What?
No problem. We're going to discuss that
Okay.
too. If I know it, I think I know the reason. If I didn't forget, at this age we come see now a little bit. But I think I know the reason. But let me just go through the four things that we do.
I'll just
So you see, you have to hear the Megillah at night and during the day. You know that we all know there is parties, especially if you go to Chabad or many synagogues on the night of Purim. So we all used to going to hearing of the Megillah Purim night, which is next Monday night. Now thank God in Chabad they have every hour reading of the Megillah, and then they have a lot of food, some drinks. Please, if you're under 21, just drink grape juice. Thank God to technology, non-alcoholic beer. You could do that. But honestly, don't drink if you're under 21. We definitely don't promote it. There's no mitzvah to get drunk on Purim these days. Most of halacha people say that, but also you have to hear the Megillah during the day. So that is number one. Number two, you have to have a big meal Tuesday by day, and you have to have meat and lots of bread.
Does it have
Juju
to be home
kebab.
cooked, or
What?
Does it have to be home cooked?
No, but I was going to talk to you. If you guys want to have a Purim Suda here, we could do it Tuesday afternoon. But again, if you guys want, the other rabbi will do it. Just let me know at the end. Next Tuesday, we could start at 5:30. Just come, eat, and enjoy, and then you go. So it's a very big mitzvah actually to drink and eat a meal. Why is there a big mitzvah? So because our salvation came through Esther. How did Esther make the miracle happen? He made a whole big wine drinking and invited Achashverosh, and then in the middle of the feast, he said, "This Haman is the one that wants to kill the Jews." Is that correct, people? Now, there's two mitzvahs which are very important, people. You got to do this. Mitzvah number one, please, guys, come on this side. I'm not a bad person. Come on this side, guys. Yeah, come on this side. I have a weak neck. No, I can't turn around that much. Yeah, move over, man. Thank you, guys. There's two mitzvot that we have to send gifts to each other, gifts of food, which that means on the day of Purim, this is called Mishloach Manot. On the day of Purim, you actually give two foods, two different types of foods, or a food and a drink, at least to one person. Boys give it to boys, girls give it to girls. Okay? Now, what's the reason that you have to give gifts to each other? So you're going to see actually these customs have a lot of beautiful reasons behind them. There are two reasons given. Reason number one is because one of the gossips that Haman did, he said Jews don't get along. They hate each other. They're always fighting. They never get along. So to prove that that's not true, Jews are really very friendly. So on this day, we all give gifts to each other. That's true. Again, we give gifts to people that you're friendly with. Second reason is not to embarrass poor people, because everybody has a commandment to eat a big meal on the day of Purim. Some people don't have any money to buy any food. So what do you want them to do? To go and beg? That's very embarrassing. Correct? So therefore the rabbis made this rule that even rich people give 2 items of food to each other. So then when a poor person receives it, he's not embarrassed. Because even rich people give to each other, I'm saying, the gifts. So you see, to such an extent, our rabbis were like so sensitive to the needs of people on Purim, they made sure they get some food in a way that they're not embarrassed. Very important thing. Because let's pay attention. That's about Mishloach Manot. There's another mitzvah. If you know any poor people, if you definitely know any poor people on that day, or whatever, if you know people that do know poor people, many times a lot of organizations have poor people amongst them. So whatever it is, they collect the money and they give it to the poor. So what's the reason that you have to give money to the poor people on Purim? Has nothing to do with regular tzedakah that you give to the synagogue. You got to find 2 poor people and give them. Each one a little bit of a gift. Could be either food or money. So the reason is because, again, they're supposed to have a meal on Purim. That's the main reason for it. And if we give them money, how much money are you supposed to give them? No, for Purim, I'm not saying that's generally giving tzedakah. How much do you have to give to a poor person?
Is that a good answer?
However much you can give.
What?
However much you should give.
As much as you can give? That's good. But
I
what's the
think as
minimum?
much as they, enough to go get a meal.
That's very good. That's the opinion of the Ben Ish Chai. Awesome. See, you're a smart guy. So some people say given 10 cents is enough, but they say it should be strict, like what you said. It has to be able to buy, like, how much is 180 grams? That's like half a pound of bread and something to eat with half a pound of bread.
That's like $5.
Yeah, again, that's like a decent meal, like a hot dog sandwich, whatever. He has to be able to eat, bread.
Does it have to be to a Jew, a poor Jew, or just any poor
It
person?
has to be a Jewish person. Again, to a goy, you give tzedakah.
But
But mitzvah, he has no mitzvah Purim. I'm saying, again, I'm not telling you don't give charity to goys. Of course you can. The giving money to the poor on Purim is not mitzvah of tzedakah. It's a separate mitzvah. So that's for your Jewish brother and sister.
where do we find like poor Jewish people there?
Okay, so in this place, in the synagogue, here, we know 4 or 5 people that have no money.
So we would just donate it to you, and
You could bring it to me, and then again, I know 4 or 5 people. You give it to, if you go to Beit Mitzvah on Shabbat,
Yeah.
you give to Rabbi Cohen if you want. If you go to other synagogues, believe me, it's unfortunate. We have so many. I mean, we are lucky, thank God we have our parents and we don't need anything. Thank God we have a roof. I'm telling you, I know people divorced, the husband's left them, 2 kids, she doesn't have a job. Really, really sad. When there was one time they even didn't have toilet paper at home.
Wow.
I'm not kidding. We are really lucky. Thank God we have what we have. And when we delivered the toilet paper to them, she started crying.
Oh, right.
I mean, she couldn't believe it. Somebody told me about, that mother with 2 kids. So whatever, we spoke to her, and then when it was delivered to her, she really got very emotional. So again, that's a mitzvah of Purim. Why do we put, masks?
Yeah, awesome.
The costume. You see, what happened is the Jews did certain sins in Purim. That's why the bad decree happened. But they really didn't want to do it. It was just a mask. Inside, you're pure people. So you put a mask that you see, what we see, the evil or the wrong things that we have, it's only a mask. We're really very, very pure people. Is that good, guys? So let's finish with a story that happened actually in Purim, and then we're going to go. This is one of those miracle stories. This happened in one of the Arab countries. The Arab countries, usually one of the advisors of the Muslim king was a Jewish person, right? Even the anti-Semites, who's their doctor, personal doctor? A Jew.
Jew.
Who's their personal banker?
Jew.
A Jew. But they hate all the Jews, that's it. But their physician and their banker has to be a Jew. So anyways, again, no, the kings in Muslim countries, they didn't hate the Jews. Actually, the king loved them. That's what made them their advisors, but other advisors were very jealous of them. So this was, I don't know if it was in Yemen. Yeah, this story was in Yemen, and it's called Purim Teiman. In Yemen, they used to keep Purim 2 days. On the day of Purim and 3 days after Purim. Why did they do that? The story was that there was a king, and his advisor was a Jewish person. So the other guys were very jealous. Now this king had only one son. One son, the only son. And this guy, the kid, again, those days, how do you transport, how do you move? No cars. You have a white horse, right? The white horse was for the kings. So this kid was like the apple of the eye of this king. And then, every Purim, this kid loved candies and cookies, especially Jewish cookies, right? You guys know about the king of Iran? Shah,
Yeah.
right? So his father, Reza Shah, loved the Jews. You know why? Because before he became a king, he was a regular person. Every Friday night, he would go to Jewish homes and eat gondi.
One day.
I promise you, that's why he loved the Jews, because he had gondi. Not Indian gondi. So then you guys know that Putin loves the Jews too. So Putin himself told the Chabad rabbi the reason why he loves the Jews, because when he was a very poor kid, they had a Jewish neighbor. And the lady of that home, I mean, they were very poor. They had nothing. The only one that actually gave Putin food when he was a kid was a Jewish neighbor. You can never know what a little kindness, how far it goes. So anyways, this kid of the king loved, the hamantash, the special cookies that you have for Purim, and he loved a lot of candies. So Purim night, they would go into the Jewish quarter and they would give him all the candies and food that he liked. So one time, two advisors decided to get rid of the Jews. They had a very evil plan. What they do, so they hired two of the guards and they said, when they go to the Jewish quarter for Purim night, so when the kid wants to get off the horse, one of you guys push him, the other guy hold the sword up. The prince is going to fall on, he's going to die, he's dark, nobody knows what happened. Blame the Jews, that's it. So then once for all, the king is going to kill all the Jews. They're going to kick them out of the country. They did it. And they were successful. They made a whole commotion. All the Jews, murdered this poor prince. And they bring him in front of the king. So the king was very mad. And he calls the rabbi, that was his advisor. And he says, tell me, either you're going to tell me who killed the kid, or I'm going to burn the entire ghetto. I'm not going to let you get out. So he says, it's not us. We didn't kill him. Promise you, we love your son. The king didn't believe it. So the guy says, you know what, do me a favor, give us 3 days. We're going to pray to our God, and if you find you an answer, we find you an answer. If not, you could kill us. What could we do? Anyway, so what happens is they go pray, and they were fasting for 3 days. At the end of the 3rd day, there was a little kid. I don't know what the name was, but he came out to be a very big Kabbalist. Later on, the kid comes and he tells his mom, Mom, I'm hungry, I want to eat. The mom says, no, Jewish ladies, you can't eat, come on. It's a fast day. So he says, no, take me to the king. I know who killed, I could prove to you who killed that little prince. This kid was a very holy kid. So anyways, the mother says, what are you talking about? Nonsense. So they take him to the rabbi, and the rabbi says, let's go. He saw there's something special about this kid. So this kid was a big Kabbalist, miracle worker. So when he went to the king, actually the body of the prince was still there. So guys, you know how you say truth in Hebrew? What's the word for truth in Hebrew? Emet, right? Exactly. So he put on a piece of paper the word Aleph, Mem, Tav, Emet. And he put it on the forehead of the dead baby. And then he says, I command you, stand up and tell us the truth. So this dead body rises. And he points to the 2 guards that, one pushed him on the sword. And then what he did, he erased the Aleph. When he erased the Aleph of Emet, what's the word?
Net.
What does Met mean? Met means dead. So the guy fell down and died. Yeah, so then the king found out and he killed these 2 guys. And that was it. And they actually, they admitted that it was some of the top advisors. And then the Jews were saved. This happened 3 days after Purim. So in Taman, they used to keep 2 days of Purim from then on. The regular Purim and their own Purim. That's another thing. Jews' life is above nature, people. We said at the first part that, some people didn't hear, that the Jewish life, we don't live according to nature. Mark Twain said, that's not how the Jews live. You were persecuted for 1900 years. We don't have our own country. We don't speak the same language. The Romans came for 300 years. They don't exist anymore. The Greeks came, the old Persians came, but the Jews being persecuted, they exist. It says that's a mystery. How did it exist? Because our life is supernatural. You're connected to God, you exist against all odds. Thank you guys for listening.
Mark Twain, the author?
Yeah, he has go look for it. What he wrote about the Jews. He says it's a mystery of the world. How do the Jews exist? No country, no same language, no same customs, and they're being persecuted for so many years.
He's Jewish?
He's not Jewish, no.
He's Christian?
I think it was